Good evening. Welcome to the joint press conference on the 6th Singapore-Australia Leaders Meeting. May I now invite Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong to deliver his remarks. Prime Minister, please.
Prime Minister Morrison, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all. I bid a very warm welcome to Prime Minister Scott Morrison to Singapore. Very happy that he decided to stop over here on the way to G7 in Cornwall, and that we've been able to meet in person after quite a long time. Naturally, Prime Minister Morrison and I discussed the COVID situation. Australia and Singapore have similar approaches to keep the virus out of our populations and to keep our people safe. And we have strongly supported each other, especially to get through the early days of the pandemic. Our health authorities shared information on the virus. We helped to bring each other's citizens home from abroad, especially early on when flights were getting cancelled. And Singapore Airlines maintained passenger and cargo flights to and from Australia throughout the border closures. Now the world is moving into the next phase of the fight, with vaccinations becoming more prevalent and countries beginning to open up their borders. So we discussed how two-way travel between Singapore and Australia can eventually resume in a safe and calibrated manner when both sides are ready. Before COVID-19, many Singaporeans traveled to Australia for business, for holidays, and to pursue their education, and vice versa. And we need to resume these people-to-people flows to maintain our close and excellent bilateral relationship. We need to prepare the infrastructure and the processes to get ready to do this, and it starts with mutual recognition of health and vaccination certificates, possibly in a digital form, very likely. And when ready, when all the preparations are ready, then we can start small with an air travel bubble to build confidence on both sides. Relatedly, our health ministries have signed an MOU to collaborate in healthcare and health technologies. Our overall cooperation has been anchored by our 10-year comprehensive strategic partnership, which is now at its halfway mark. Both sides have made progress on the 5 pillars of the CSP: economics and trade, defense and foreign affairs, science and innovation, people to people, and last year we added the digital economy as a 5th pillar of our comprehensive strategic partnership. Last year in December also, our Treaty on Military Training and Training Area Development came into force, and this was a milestone in our long-standing defense partnership. Singapore greatly appreciates Australia's generous and sustained support for SAF training over many years in many air bases and camps all over Australia. On the digital economy, we had a bilateral digital economy agreement, which also came into force last year. This was the fruit of our forward-looking, open and progressive attitudes towards trade and the future economy. And building on the digital economy agreement, Prime Minister Morrison and I have agreed to commence discussions to develop a fintech bridge between our two countries. In science and innovation, we are exploring collaborations on low-emission solutions to support our climate change efforts. This is another key domestic priority for both of us, and it includes a public-private partnership on low-emission fuels and technologies for shipping and port operations, based at Nanyang Technological University's Ecolabs. We are also exploring a broader partnership on a green economy agreement. This will facilitate trade and investment in environmentally sustainable goods and services and strengthen environmental governance and our capacity to address climate change. Once again, the Prime Minister and I are very happy that we are able to meet again and that our relations have continued to grow and to prosper in these challenging times. I look forward to continue to work with him and his government to take our relationships further forward, and wish him a safe and productive trip to Cornwall in the UK for the G7.
May I now invite the Honourable Scott Morrison, MP, Prime Minister of Australia, to speak, please. Prime Minister, please.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Prime Minister Lee, for your very warm welcome to be back here in Singapore with you again in this magnificent property and to be here with our friends in Singapore is a great thrill after such a long time. Can I also thank you for the opportunity that we have had to continue our engagement over the course of the pandemic to date, even though we haven't been able to meet physically. But today is a great opportunity that is presented to us to be able to renew that association in this way, but also to press forward with the many areas of our very productive partnership. Australia and Singapore share many things. We share history. We share trust, most significantly. We share ambition. And that ambition, I think, is reflected in the comprehensive strategic partnership we have, that is now being demonstrated in the many granular agreements and memorandums that have been completed in so many parts of this relationship, whether it's what we're doing together in defence, in technology, in addressing climate change, and importantly, working together to ensure the stability of our region, that all of our prosperity, all of our safety depends. I particularly want to thank Prime Minister Lee, you for your great leadership within this region, and particularly as one of the longest serving leaders, particularly in the ASEAN partnership. I thank very much Singapore for the way you have supported Australia in so many different areas of our relationship. But I never seek to not take the opportunity when I can to gain the insights of Prime Minister Lee on his views on the region. ASEAN more broadly, but particularly Singapore, is very central to Australia's view of the world. This is where we live. This is where our primary relationships are. And we greatly respect the region in which we live and how we outwork those relationships on a day-to-day basis in very practical ways. The Prime Minister has mentioned those already. The FinTech bridge is something I'm particularly excited about. Previously, as a Treasurer, we were able to secure such a bridge with the United Kingdom, and now to have one with Singapore, I think is tremendous. Singapore is one of the leading economies in the world when it comes to financial technology. And for Singapore and Australia to connect up in this way will only add further to both of our countries' success in realising the great advances that can be achieved for our economies through financial technology. Equally, cooperating on low emissions technologies, especially hydrogen, which is the key game-changing fuel of the future. Australia has always played a very significant role in meeting the energy needs of Asia, and particularly for Southeast Asia. And we intend to continue to do that by ensuring that we are achieving the breakthroughs in technology which will enable us to continue to support our many partners in the region and their energy needs. I particularly welcome the fact that we're making so much progress with projects like Sun Cable's project, which can see the homes powered here in Singapore from solar panels in Australia. That's an exciting new development amongst many, but particularly the work we're now doing on maritime and port use for hydrogen. That is an obvious place of partnership between Australia and Singapore, and we look forward to the great results that I know will come from that partnership. Prime Minister, we thank you again for your hospitality. We look forward to the many other areas the relationship will continue to give us opportunity to pursue. But the one above all at present, which we are very focused on, is the challenge of COVID. I commend you for the tremendous a job you've done here in Singapore. Singapore is a country we've often looked at the experience of here with COVID, and we have discussed that on other occasions. We have sought to learn from Singapore in how they've combated COVID, and I'm sure there have been lessons that have gone both ways. That's why I welcome the fact that will now work together to put the infrastructure in place, to put the systems in place to enable us to open up in a similar way that we've been able to open up to New Zealand from Australia when we're both in a position to do so. There is still some time before we reach that milestone, but there is nothing impeding us, as we've discussed today, from getting on with the job of putting systems in place that will enable such a bubble to emerge between Singapore and Australia as it does now occur between Australia and New Zealand. But in addition to that, as we've discussed, Prime Minister, giving a priority to students from Singapore to be able to return to Australia to complete their studies and to engage in their studies, and for the students from Singapore to be a first opportunity to see increased travel between Australia and Singapore realised, and for that to occur sooner rather than later. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Morrison. We've come to the end of the remarks.